Hi, welcome to Analysis with Grace. I'm Gabby Grace, and today we are analyzing the film Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? It was made in 2000 by Coen brothers, I believe. It was written, directed, and produced by them, which is pretty cool. It stars George Clooney along with some other actors. Basically, the first thing we're getting into is plot structure. The film starts with Clooney's character, Ulysses Everett McGill, and he is in prison, basically, for, I forget exactly what. It's like a white-collar crime that we find out later on in the story. But he convinces his two convicts that he's chained with by the ankles. Their names are Delmar and Pete. He convinces them to escape, because all they're doing is working on the side of the road. They're digging or mining and working, and that's just what they have them doing in the heat of the sun and everything. He convinces them to leave with him of promises of, oh, I buried this great treasure, before I got arrested, before I got put in jail. And since they're literally chained to the ankles, they kind of have to say yes, because A, it sounds interesting, because treasure, and B, what else are they gonna do? Sit in prison? So basically, it's based off of the Odyssey by Homer, and all I know about the Odyssey is what I've learned from Epic the Musical, which is probably not a great thing to go off of, but I know the basic events and stuff, so that's what we're gonna go with. First, we're gonna go off of plot structure, and then cinematography and editing, and then sound, because I also think that's important. So first, with the plot structure, it starts off kind of slow. We get really wide shots showing just where they're working in fields or on the sides of the roads, and they're in classic black and white prison jumpsuits, and we have some nice little song playing in the background as they escape, and you can hear their chains jingling. That's a good sound. They really got for post-production, they really put the sounds of the chains in what they're editing, because you can hear it very prominently, which kind of emphasizes the fact of, oh, they're quite literally chained together because they're prisoners and they're stuck together on this adventure before they are able to break out of their bonds. So we start off with really wide shots and kind of slow average pacing as they get off of their and we start with kind of slow, kind of wide shot pacing as we see their environment and their setting introduced, and we have a nice little song playing in the background, and you can really hear the chains. That's the thing that I they did with post-production. You can really hear the sound of the chains clinking against each other to kind of emphasize the fact of, hey, these guys are chained together right now. They're prisoners that they're escaping, and they're quite literally stuck together on this adventure. And even after they get their chains broken, they are, stuck together in a more metaphorical sense. So, like I said, we get wide shots that establish a setting, and kind of slow pacing. They've made it away from their encampment imprisonment, and they're just walking along. First, they try and get on a train, but that fails as they fall off the train. I forget which one does it. Delmar or Pete, one of them just falls, and because they're stuck together, chained together, they all fall. And then they have this blind man he's on one of the train carts that you just move like this, and they catch a ride with him, and he's a prophet, which there is a prophet in the Odyssey that I know of. I know in Epic the Musical he's in the underworld or whatever, but he's a blind prophet in the Odyssey and in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And he's predicting all these things. He's you'll see a cow on the roof of a house or some kind of building. I forget exactly what he says. And he's saying all these things, and they're okay, old guy. And then they go on their little adventure. They face various struggles. They are hunted by the sheriff. They meet a black man who is off on this like quest to like perform for this music guy. His name's Tommy, I believe. The Amanda's, he's very polite. They hitch him a ride in their car, but it breaks down later. It's a later problem. But they're just going on like little like side quests on the way to their main objective, which what Delmar and Pete thinks is to get the treasure. But that's a later thing. So they're going on all these little quests and little like side adventures in part of the main like plot goal, which is to get to their treasure. They become like famous radio singers for doing this one famous song. They end up facing sirens, which are like washing their like clothes in a lake or whatever, and then they seduce them and they give them like alcohol and they're like under the influence, and then they wake up. Ulysses and Delmar wake up. Pete is gone. His clothes are there still, but a frog emerges from underneath the clothes, and Delmar quite literally thinks that Pete has turned into a frog. When actually, in the night, he was found by the sheriff. He was tied up and like whipped and beat into like revealing where the treasure is or where they're going to go get the treasure, because everyone thinks it's real. And he ends up ratting them out because he's under like torture or whatever. And he gets re-imprisoned back on working on the side of the road. And Delmar and Ulysses they think he's a frog, so they keep him in this little box. And they meet this man who wants to work with them, and he offers them like a little picnic under a tree, and really he just wants to see what's in this box. So he like beats them up. He like beats the crap out of them, and then Delmar jumps on him like trying to defend who they think is Pete the frog in this little box. But we know it's just a frog, and this man doesn't know what's in the box. He thinks it's money or like something worthwhile. So he opens the box. He realizes it's just a frog. He squishes the frog, which is kind of sad. And then like they manage to like go their separate ways or whatever. Ulysses and Delmar are off together away from the man that just killed Pete the frog. And they hop in the back of this vehicle, and they're like riding the back of it along the road, and then they see like prison workers, so they're like keeping their heads down low. And then they see Pete, and Pete sees them, and Ulysses is like, I think I'm just seeing things, because we knew Pete got turned into a frog and then got squished. And meanwhile, Pete was told by the sheriff and now sees them and thinks, oh, they left me, they ditched me. So now he's mad. But then later, Ulysses and Delmar manage to break Pete out of jail late in the night, and they're in the dark in the woods. And that's when Ulysses tells them, there's no treasure. I just said that to get you guys to come with me, so that way you could help me escape, because we were quite literally chained at the ankle for that time being. And they basically, were very upset, especially Pete, because his sentence was almost over. He had like a couple weeks, but now they're all going to get like 50 more years if they get caught again. And the reason that Ulysses is doing this is to get back to his wife, which is like in the Odyssey when Odysseus tries to get back to Penelope, which takes 20 years. I forget the time that takes place in this film. But Odysseus is trying to get back to Penelope before she gets like married or engaged to suitors, and at least in Epic the Musical, this may not be a great reference to pull from, but it's the reference I'm pulling from. She like buys time for Odysseus to get home by prolonging the suitors from like succeeding and winning her hand, because she does not want to marry them, which is the opposite in this film with the plot that they have going on, because Ulysses' Penelope is engaged to a man and has a baby with him. This random man, like his wife, like went to prison, told his 3 daughters that he had with this woman. She told his 3 daughters that he got hit by a train and then got with another man and had like a little baby with him, and they're gonna get married. So that forms a whole new debacle where Ulysses tries to win back his wife, because that's the whole reason that he left prison, because he found out that she was going to get married in a couple days. That's why he didn't wait the 2 weeks until their sentence ended, because he quite literally did not have 2 weeks worth of time. So they end up sneaking in to this like banquet dinner. It might be a rehearsal dinner. They end up sneaking in as like they put on fake beards and outfits and everything, and they get ushered onto the stage, and they start singing little songs, and people are entertained. And then they start singing the song that they sing on the radio, and people realize, oh my gosh, these are the famous people that sang this famous song on the radio. And a plot that I forgot to mention was just kind of insane that I forgot to mention. Like, as they're arguing, as Pete is like tackling Ulysses because he's so upset that he jeopardized their like lives and everything just to get back to his wife when they only had 2 weeks left of prison, they ran into a Ku Klux Klan like meeting. It was a big thing. Like, they found Tommy, the man from before, and I think they were gonna like burn him or murder him. So they disguise themselves and they make their way. They like destroy the whole thing. There's this big flaming cross that they have. They make it fall down and they grab Tommy and they escape. And so then they go to the little banquet thing because he's trying to get his wife back. That's all Ulysses wants to do. And to not get arrested again, obviously. So they play the songs. But then the leader of the Ku Klux Klan, he comes in and he's actually like one of the mayors or city officials. I think he's trying to run for mayor. He has like a high state of power, basically. He comes in, takes a microphone, and he says, these men are frauds. Like, they're criminals. They, like, ruined my Ku Klux Klan, like, thing that we had going on tonight. And basically everyone goes, no, these guys are radio celebrities. We like them. We don't like you. And so the other, like, city official, I think the other man that was running for mayor, or he's in an also high place of power, he pardons them. He says, like, are you guys done with all the bad things you did in your past? They said yes. And he said, then I pardon you because you are radio celebrities and you sing great songs. So that's literally what they did. And I think it's kind of cool. It's just fun. I liked that part. It was that's like the falling action of the plot, for sure. That's when everything's getting, like, that's when it's going down from the climax and everything is almost to its end, almost to, like, the resolution at the end of our little plot. The resolution part is when Ulysses goes to get his wife's ring back from this cabin that they used to have, and the sheriff finds them. And another part from earlier that I forgot to mention, as they're escaping, they find, like, people, like, baptizing or, like, cleansing people of their sins or resolving them and everything. Pete and Zelmar go and get resolved and dunked in the, like, water, and Ulysses doesn't. But Ulysses, now, when the sheriff's about to hang them, because he lives by his own laws, I guess, Ulysses gets on his knees and he, like, prays to God. And then a giant flood comes in and washes, like, everything away. And they make it out okay. And guess what they see? They see a cow on a roof of the house, because the water level's, like, here. And so, roof. And then there's a cow that made it onto the roof because of the flood. And the blind prophet at the beginning also said that they would find treasure, but not in the way they expected. And I feel like they did, because they got pardoned, they're released from prison and everything. He got his wife back. That's the resolution. At the end, he gets his wife back and everything. He finds a ring. Apparently it's not the right one, and they end the movie with everyone bickering. Him bickering with his wife, like, I'm sorry, it's probably at the bottom of the lake, as they walk away, and one of his daughters looks at, like, the blind prophet making it to that town on his little train cart thing on the railroad tracks. And then that's when it ends. So that's what we have for plot structure, which I liked it. It was a very interesting watch. Cinematography wise, they loved their medium and close-up shots. There was a lot of medium shots that went from like the knees, you can't see him pointing at my knees, to like the top of the subject's head. And then they had a lot of close-up shots that went from like kind of down here, like chest, to the top of the head. Especially when they're walking or talking with each other, they always use medium and close-up shots. They didn't do very many extreme close-ups. They just mainly did medium and close-up shots to kind of show the closeness of the characters in the scene and give a general sense of the setting and where they're at, depending if they're walking along the railroad track, if they're in the woods, if they're performing in like the radio studio, it shows them in a certain way. And then when they're having like conversations with each other, that's when they do like the close-up shots to show more like emotion between the characters. That's basically what we got for the cinematography. They did a lot with different sounds. They definitely took a lot in post-production, like I said, with the chains, and definitely like walking and vehicle sounds and gunshots and just sounds that they wanted to emphasize to the audience. That way it'd be crisp for them to hear in the ears. They meet this character named like Billy the Bandit, who has some issues, but he's like shooting his gun and everything. They make sure that you hear that very crisply, and they do a really good job with doing like certain sounds like that. If they want you to notice something in a film or in a scene specifically, they'll make sure you notice it, whether it be the way the camera's framed, the way they edit the different shots with the cuts. They did some like long shots, but they didn't really do too many like back-to-back montages. It was very evenly spaced out. For like each phase of their adventure, we got some good like medium length shots for whatever part in their journey they were at, or different scenes that were taken. Maybe there were cuts that didn't like, that looked seamless, maybe. But they did good moderate sized like chunks of scenes. So for some parts we weren't like, oh, we only got 2 seconds of that. They took each like plot point in the story and gave it a good amount of time. That's probably why the film is the length that it is. But for mise-en-scene, everything that they put in a film has a purpose. So like the length of the shot, the length of the overall film, the different like frame or like cuts that they use or shots, like we were talking about the medium shots and the close-ups, and with like the post-production sounds and editing, all of that is mise-en-scene, and all like the directors, editors, and the producers, they all put that in there on purpose. They all put those details in their film because it had a purpose. That's what everyone does for every film, and I'm pretty much going to say that in every video that I do for this, because that's literally what filmmakers do. And even as a filmmaker, I know that once I make a film, it's important to put everything that I need in there to like make sure every single detail that I put in a film to have its own specific purpose. And whatever I want to be highlighted to viewers or audiences, to put a little bit of emphasis on that, whether it be the way it's framed, the length of the shot, how close we are to the subject, how much of the subject we're seeing, whether it's like that, or the type of sounds that are like accented or like implied, not implied, that are emphasized, the types of sounds that are emphasized. And same with lighting. Wherever the lighting is on a character, that can show a lot of emotion as well. They definitely did that. That's why I like the scene where Pete jumps on Ulysses, where he tells the truth about why he like had them escape with him. It was in the dark in the woods. They have a lot of like good like scenes where they just talk around like a campfire in the dark in the woods. They did that with Tommy, and they did that with the not well bandit robber. He gets up and leaves in the middle of the campfire. But they always sit around the fire and they just talk about whatever they're going to do next, or what are they going to do for tomorrow. So that's a good way to do stuff like that with lighting and like emphasis on certain scenes. That's really all I have for you for this video. So thank you for watching my analysis of Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And I hope you enjoyed.